Come up. Hey Tess.
Hey baby, how are you?
Good. So today we had a great session.
We did.
Brand exercise. So I wanted to talk about, let me pause for a second so I can cut all this part off.
Yes.
Okay. So Tess.
It's amazing the minute you're on camera.
I know,
like,
totally change. Hey.
Like I dropped IQ by about 55 points.
I know. Duh.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about branding and what occurred today. With branding, what do you think is one of the misconceptions on branding? Let's just talk about that. Misconceptions, and what is it that we would really like for people to take away when we talk about branding?
Sure. I'm not looking at you or the camera.
You can look at the camera. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions I come across with brand is that it's something, people, they're either in one of two camps. It's either something that we control very tightly and we put out our story to the world, or they think it's something over which they've got no control whatsoever. But really there are many definitions of brand, there are many ways to frame it, there are many ways that people talk about brand, and the way we talk about it, we try and distill it down into three very simple things. And the first is, it's positioning, brand, and engagement. And positioning is proving your differentiated value to a target stakeholder. So who are you, what do you deliver, what do you promise? What makes you different, and why should people believe you? And a lot of the time, most people's problems are not actually in the arenas of brand or engagement, it's in positioning. They confuse people, they're poorly positioned. The second element of brand that we talk about a lot is engagement. So how are we connecting to those target stakeholders? So once we've established who we want to speak to, once we know who they are, how are we engaging with them? How do we speak to them? How do we talk to them? What's our message? And then the third piece of brand that really is brand is what is the experience that we promise we will deliver to our target stakeholder? And in essence, that's what brand is. And brand, it's as simple or as complicated as you want to make it. But for me, the beautiful thing about brand is it touches every part of a business. So if you work in branding and marketing, it's a privilege that you're fortunate. You work in a field that touches everything, right down to the what does the name badge on your salespeople's tags say? All of these things are all brand. They're all a part of the experience that you're delivering to your target stakeholders. So when we run these brand workshops and when we communicate with people who work in marketing and who work in brand, that's one of the things that I find most rewarding is giving them, they have a gift and they have a responsibility, and it's giving them the understanding that there's a lot they can do. There's a lot we can do with brand, and it's a cool subject, a great field.
It's an excellent subject to talk about. And earlier today you shared so many of your stories, and they are all just fantastically funny. Which one do you think stands out most for you when you speak about brand? And I would love for you to share that with everyone.
Sure. My stories are a funny one. Some of them are mine, some of them are not mine. Some of them, I was saying to Vivi earlier today, I got caught out telling a story a couple of years ago. It was some story that I borrowed from someone. I tripped over the facts, and then I got all caught up because it was, the story actually happened. I borrowed it from someone, but the story actually happened before I was born. And someone else in the workshop had to come and correct me, and I was mortified. So thereafter, I learned to create my own stories. But
okay.
I love, brand and marketing and all of these things. Really what we're doing is we're telling a story.
Yep.
And we call it communications, and we call it marcoms, and we call it brand, and we put all of these complicated labels on, and we turn it into something that's big, but ultimately what we're doing, it's a very human thing. We're telling stories. And it's been happening for thousands and thousands of years.
Yes.
In
it's
one
like a
form or
campfire.
another. Yes. In one way or another, we've been telling stories for thousands of years, and so that's how I like to run workshops and teach and work is telling stories, because really when you're telling the right story, it's something that people listen to and they relate to and they kind of tap into. And I know in these workshops when I'm telling a story, I know that I know I've got him when you see people just lean in. And,
Yes.
and it only ever happens when you're telling a good story.
That's what happened today.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to remind you of one of the stories that was short.
What was your
It was
favorite?
funny. Well, I had all of them. I loved all of them. But one of them, when you were talking about the chipper or the brick cutter.
Oh.
It was
The
brief.
3 stonemasons.
Yes, the
Yes.
3 stonemasons. It was brief, but
It's so short. So
reverberated.
actually, so that's such a marketing cliche,
Yeah.
and that's been told time and time again. So
I love
I
it.
tell a very redacted version that I think cuts out all sorts of fact, and
Mhm.
in fact I probably think I tell it wrong, but the version of it that I say, and just short and snappy, and it's really the precursor to the piece of the workshop where I want to talk about, what is it that we're really selling here, because I work a lot with companies and brilliant minds who sit back and say, this is what we're selling, and they describe a very technical drug or piece of technology or
Right.
equipment, and that's never what you're selling. If you work in pharma and you think you're selling drugs, you're missing a trick, because people are buying time. They're buying time with their families, they're buying lives, they're buying convenience, they're buying not having to get in the car and go to a doctor once a week. They're not buying a drug. And so the precursor, so that, but it can get a little heavy and serious. So I tell the stonemason story.
Yeah.
You're kind of walking down the road, and imagine you're back a few hundred years in medieval England, and all a bit dark and grey, and you pass the first man, and he's chipping away at a brick, and you say, what are you doing? And the guy looks up and, I'm making a brick. Oh, cool, okay. And then you kind of wander further down the road, and there's a second man, and he too is chipping away at a block of stone, and you ask him what he's doing. And he goes, I'm creating the foundation for a building. Okay, creating a foundation. You walk a little further down the road, and you come across a third man, and then that third man is chipping away, exact same task, chipping away at his brick, and you say, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm building God's house on earth. And the 3 men are all creating stone to lay the foundation for what will eventually become a cathedral. But I love that story because the task is identical.
Mm-hmm.
One guy's chipping a brick, one guy's laying the groundwork, another guy's bringing God home. And
Yes.
it's just the mentality, it's a mindset, it's a cultural shift, and so it's one of my favorites actually.
Yeah, and I really like that because it was brief, but it reverberates. The message is so deep, it can carry on.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
So,
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah. So, and Tess has so many more stories. So you're going to have to contact us to hear more and to learn more about branding. So thank you for tuning in, and please don't hesitate to contact me. Questions.
You want to hear more stories?
More stories. Oh, I love the L'Oreal story too.
Oh,
You gotta tune in later. Oops.